I've said it countless times now on this channel, and I'll say it again. 2017's Prey from Arcane Studios, and even more so its DLC Mooncrash, are the most underrated video games of all time. And it goes without saying, must be played by everyone before they die. You see, when Prey was originally released many years ago, it was met with some of the worst review scores for a AAA product, including a 6 from GameSpot and a damning 4 out of 10 from IGN. In gaming, scores like this are essentially a death sentence, and they even initially dissuaded me from trying the game for some time. But to my surprise, when I finally got around to playing this elusive title, I was met with one of the most fascinating and memorable experiences in a game I've ever had. First of all, the introduction to the game, which I won't spoil, is my favorite of all time, no question. It instantly makes you realize what kind of experience you have in store for yourself, that being a psychological masterpiece, and the pacing only increases from there. Built from the ground up as an immersive sim, my favorite genre of games, Prey excels on the premise that every single place and thing you encounter is a sandbox in and of itself. Every location is meticulously designed to allow sneaking, shooting, climbing, hoisting, or hacking. And each gadget or weapon you unlock has multiple uses as well. For example, the glue cannon, which you can find early on, can be used to freeze enemies in place to allow you to land critical melee hits. But it also can be used to craft makeshift bridges that open up entirely new areas even at the start of the game. I remember on my first playthrough, there was an escape pod high on the ceiling of a specific area I was in that was supposed to only be accessible by traveling all around the space station of Talos 1 and finding keys and overriding passwords. But using the glue cannon, I was able to literally spend 30 minutes slowly building a bridge that I climbed through in mid-air to the escape shuttle, which rewarded me with a secret ending dozens of hours before you're even supposed to beat the game. Things like this are what games are all about: exploration, discovery, immersion, and rewards. Finding out that you can actually break the game like this makes it so much more enjoyable because it shows the developers respect your intelligence and allow you to come up with solutions on your own rather than being confined to a linear experience. Another great example of this would be the Huntress Boltcaster, a Nerf-style crossbow that shoots little rubber bullets that barely do any damage. At first glance, this seems pretty useless, but soon you discover that it allows you to shoot through small crevices to hit computer screens as if you're touching them. Meaning if you spend the time and have the patience, you can from many yards away turn on automated defense turrets to kill enemies or unlock doors by hitting a button that's out of your reach. But what if you're out of ammo? Well, with high enough strength, you could rip the door open or move heavy objects to stack them and climb on top. With certain powers, you could even transform yourself into a small cup and roll your way through an opening in the window into an area you want to be. Every single objective in Prey has countless ways to solve it like this. No matter what you choose to upgrade or which stats and weapons you choose to bring into battle, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt there is always a way to move forward as long as you have what's most important: your mind. And that sense of freedom and immaculate game design gives you a special feeling the entire time you play Prey. A feeling that more games should be like this, designed from the ground up with agency and expression of the player in mind, i.e. immersive sims. But if you thought that was good, then the DLC Mooncrash only takes this formula to even greater heights. And it's so sad that barely anyone has even played this DLC. The DLC adds in a time element, which I sometimes can be apprehensive of in games. Mooncrash takes everything that the base game does and turns it up to 11. There are dozens of new items and obstacles, new enemies, and an entirely unique location with a gameplay loop where you must try and get all of your party members off of a moon base before disaster strikes. Through each run of Mooncrash, you strategize which characters to take into the base in which order, as they must all go in one by one, each taking one of the many escape routes that then is blocked off for all future characters. This means you can, for instance, use the hacker in your initial run through the base, while the timer is still low and enemies are weaker, to unlock all the doors. That way the engineer on your next run can come in and repair a device inside a locked door that after another character can come in and use to escape, in just one example. The mix of meta and transient strategic decisions here are amazing, where if you find good loot on one run, you could save it for all of your future characters. And even if you die during a simulation, you can use the points you have garnered from that run to upgrade and buy equipment for the next run initially. It's such a fascinating and addictive gameplay loop that only gets more and more interesting when you add on the fact that no two runs through the simulation are the same, where one might include a new hidden location that suddenly has been opened up, and another where the power is off when you first arrive and you need to fix it. Each system and mechanic of the game in Mooncrash, even more so than the base game, comes together into a harmonic ensemble that no other games have really managed to recreate for me. And that's not even to mention the amazing lore, graphics, architecture, and mystery that you can find in both Prey and its DLC. This is a science fiction and horror lover's dream come true, all built in a world that rewards you the more you put into it. And really, there are so many more specific things I could point out here as well that prove why Prey is so special. But I think a lot of that magic comes from discovering it for yourself. Discovering how to use your weapons in genius ways, discovering the secrets of what happened on board the space station Talos 1, and discovering why Prey is the single most underrated video game of all time. This game deserves so much more than it got on its initial release, and while a cult following has begun to form for this truly special title, I cannot stress enough how much you need to give it a shot before you die, if you haven't. As someone that usually finds medieval settings and premises too mundane and lacking for full game playthroughs, the next pick on my list of titles everyone should play before they die might come as a surprise. A murder mystery set in the fictional 16th century Bavarian town of Tassing that puts us in the reigns of Andreas Mahler, a journeyman artist who must help a town and clergy remain sane with no voice acting or what most people would call gameplay to speak of. You see, Pentiment is a passion project from Josh Sawyer, the man behind many beloved RPGs like Fallout New Vegas. But while most of his other games have big budgets and teams, Pentiment is a labor of love created by only 13 individuals. This means usual staples like voice acting, detailed 3D animations, and hundreds of hours of content we know and love from Obsidian is absent. But in its place is something just as magical. Every day, you awaken your home in this small town and fraternize with the locals, going to church, eating around the dinner table, and tending to the animals on the farm. Each and every NPC has a believable personality and cadence that comes through even only in text. And accompanying each of them are meticulously drawn works of 16th century art and iconography that really sell you being involved in this time period. Similar to other titles on this list as well, there is a time element on offer here in Pentiment where every day you must decide on the things you will do and the objectives you want to accomplish, which makes decision making crucial to success. Earlier on in the story, a murder occurs, and in order to solve it and prevent Tassing from falling into utter ruin, you must meet and question all the locals, learn about what they do every day, and get immersed into the lives of everyday people hundreds of years ago. And you know, a lot of games do try to include historical elements or accuracy, because seeing things like that can be really interesting. But few pull it off in such a perfect way like Pentiment does, paying homage to the different languages of the time, religious customs, dinner routines, and politics. In fact, playing the game in many ways is a fantastic introduction to the time period, and shows just how great games can be at teaching history when done to this level of quality. It's one thing reading about how Bavaria would have been during this time period, but actually getting to play as someone living the life they would have back then kind of sells the whole illusion. For example, the rooms and houses are designed based on real historical towns, and every meal you have in-game has lore about the food, culture, and even how grace was said at the table. However, none of this would make Pentiment a game everyone should play if it didn't have something that made it fun. And here is where, in my personal opinion, the game really starts to take its hold. You see, Pentiment doesn't have much traditional gameplay like many other titles with shooting or melee buttons, but what it does have is fantastic writing. Simply sitting back and taking in the sights while you discuss the meaning of God with a local hermit is the type of thing that works with good writing. And the writing extends to the murder mystery here as well, which has many twists and turns that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the final day. In fact, the main narrative of the game actually takes place over many years, so choices you make early on can have a drastic effect on the town and its people later, where if you accuse the wrong person, they will be hanged and the town changed for the worse. And even though the story of Pentiment is by no means as heroic or bombastic as most RPGs, it still somehow packs an even greater punch. The type where you will be invested in the lives of these people in this small town, and grow a greater and greater appreciation for the time period on offer. And if I had to guess, this is exactly the type of experience Pentiment was aiming for. One that, while quite niche in a lot of ways, and on the surface at times even boring and slow, is a title I think everyone should play because it has so much to offer when you give it the time of day. While I know most people would pick a different Josh Sawyer project, like say Fallout New Vegas to put on this list, or another game that's similar like Disco Elysium, I just personally found Pentiment to be the more interesting between the three. I love Fallout New Vegas in certain ways, but I don't like the setting. And while Disco Elysium has some truly breathtaking moments, I do just think a lot of it's boring, too drab, and pessimistic. I think for most people, they would argue the biggest thing that makes video games a game is, well, the gameplay. Without an engaging loop and interesting combat or mechanics to get lost in, lots of people find gaming pointless. But I think that even with the most simple yet well-designed systems, a game can be carried completely by something else entirely. The story it tells and the lessons it teaches us all. Where like a book, how you feel by the end of it all tells more than any moment we had with it along the way. And it's games like Citizen Sleeper that I think prove this point perfectly. A title with a gameplay loop so boring most people won't even try it, and endless walls of text you must read yourself with no voice acting in sight. And yet, despite all of this, Citizen Sleeper is still one of the few games, of which I have played many, which I think everyone should play before they die. The title tells the story of a sleeper, a digitized emulation of a human mind running inside a robotic body that slowly withers away. The sleeper we play as finds himself stuck on a space station called the Eye, where day by day we must fight to stay alive by taking on odd jobs or helping others around the station. The world you have been cast into is dark and twisted, with horrible people committing crimes all around you and mega corporations that treat human beings like cattle. Initially, it seems like all hope is lost. And to make matters worse, you are constantly being chased by assassins and mercenaries who hunt you down because of your past actions, stopping at nothing to terminate you. It's an anxiety-inducing setup for sure, but the gameplay itself consists of nothing more than rolling dice and hoping for good actions in everything you do, where day by day you make decisions on getting food, materials, and money to accomplish future tasks. I personally do like the loot, but I think a lot of you might find it somewhat boring if I'm being honest. But don't be alarmed, because the real part of Citizen Sleeper that makes it so special is the story. The characters you meet, the relationships you form, the people you choose to help or abandon, and what they choose to do to you in return. Citizen Sleeper isn't a game about being trapped on a space station. It's an experience designed around the human condition, about showing how even in the darkness, there is always light. And you know, in most games, it feels like pessimism has taken root, where societies have collapsed, aliens have invaded, and guns are being fired nonstop. But Citizen Sleeper, despite being a tragedy and story of the fall of society in its own right, focuses on the beauty of it all too. Through the NPCs you meet in-game and the stories you go on with them, we get to uncover a sense of hope that few other titles ever even think to evoke. Similar contemporaries like say Disco Elysium are beloved as well, but for my money, something about Citizen Sleeper and the way it tells this story is just more interesting and better. A sense that no matter how evil humanity can be, no matter how much we struggle and hurt one another, that at the core of all of us is a soul that is begging to be free, to help others, to sacrifice for the greater good, and be proud of the men and women we are. I have a full video review on this game, and I highly recommend you guys check that out for those that actually don't feel like playing based on what you've seen, because it tells a story and teaches a lesson that everyone should learn before they die, turning even the most diehard pessimists into unrelenting optimists. And as someone who has always seen the good in people, the greatness in life, and optimism I refuse to shake, I am so happy there is finally a game out there that reminds us how awesome it is to be alive, too. Citizen Sleeper isn't the most fun you will ever have playing a game, but it damn near might be one of the most important. There are moments in this title I will never forget that through nothing more than words on a screen can bring you to tears. and inspire a warmth in your heart that will extend to others around you. And well, isn't that what art, what games are all about? Not always, sometimes it's just for fun, but in the case of some special ones like Citizen Sleeper, it's about something so much more. One of my favorite things about having a channel like this is getting the ability to shout out games or narratives I think deserve so much more. Titles that for whatever reason never reached the level of recognition or fame I think they always deserved. And in terms of things like this, one of the first that always comes to my mind is an RPG that every gamer needs to try at least once before they die. One that has everything an RPG lover could ever want, and even more. Wasteland 3. Set in the harsh and frozen post-apocalyptic Colorado, you take the reins of a desert ranger, venturing into this new territory to rebuild civilization after a plea for help. It's a fairly straightforward setup, but it does the job, and the real quality of this game comes across less from just the setting and more from the moment-to-moment actions. The writing is witty and funny, with tons of choices to make in dialogue that can drastically affect quests in the main story. Some narratives revolve around crazy scientists and their wacky experiments, while others focus on more serious topics of murder or abuse, while also maintaining the jovial nature the series is known for. More than a lot of other deep-sea RPGs as well, Wasteland 3 has a keen focus on comedy. It feels like every character is either hilarious or unforgettable, with voice acting that comes across like everyone in the booth was just having a good time. And really, that's what Wasteland 3 is all about, having a good time. It's a title that never takes itself too seriously, and because of that, allows for wacky situations, like an anarcho-communist commune of robots who seek to find peace with humanity, who you can choose to either help or eliminate entirely. There are so many memorable things like this in the game too, which are all accentuated by the fantastic turn-based combat. In fact, this is actually one of the original games that got me into turn-based RPGs in the first place, even before Baldur's Gate 3. And it has some really fun and fantastical encounters, full of robots that fill the entire size of your screen, or endless waves of enemies that make you actually plan ahead and think. The harder difficulties in this game are no joke, especially if you're going a melee build like I tried to do, and if you don't know the systems, you will be struggling along the way. So without a doubt, Wasteland 3 is one of the best RPGs I've ever played, with genuinely funny writing, engaging combat, and deep and crunchy RPG systems and consequences for choices that make replayability a must. I know I often mention RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3, Rogue Trader, and Dragon Age Origins as some of the best, but it's important we don't forget the dark horse in the corner, which found its own lane and was all the better for it. If you haven't already, play Wasteland 3 before you die and experience what the recent Fallout games should have been. It's not often a game comes around with a totally original idea and nails it. But in the case of The Altars, a game centered around the story of one man cloning himself over and over, the premise managed to not only be unique, but wholly captivating too. Crafting an experience that no gamer should miss, with a gameplay loop that is fun and engaging, and a story that will pull at your heartstrings and make you think. When you first begin The Altars, you find yourself stranded on an alien planet, where you are the sole survivor of a crash landing and must now build to survive while you contact your home base and find a way out. The first few days are brutal, learning the systems, trying to find resources to mine, and doing everything yourself, from gathering, crafting, building, and scavenging. It feels almost hopeless, albeit beautiful with some stunning environments and a cool home base. But where things start to get very interesting is with a substance known as rupidium. Found only on this strange planet, you discover that through the use of your quantum computer, the liquid can generate literal copies of yourself in what are known as altars. These altars, while looking similar to you, have in their own minds lived completely different lives, making different decisions at crucial moments in your life that lead to them becoming essentially wholly different people. One might have become a builder, another a doctor, some scientists, botanists, or even a hired muscle. And over the course of the game, you must slowly spawn more and more of these copies of yourself in order to help maintain your base of operations and gather materials to craft more complex equipment. Throughout this too, you must constantly speak with a shadowy corporation with unknown intentions back home who originally sent you on the trip, all while confrontations are breaking out between your alters which you must try and resolve, as they slowly teach you more about who you are and the decisions you made along your path that resulted in the person you became. In a lot of ways, The Alters is a psychological look into what it means to be human, how our decisions affect who we become, and the ideas of love, hope, and trust. And this deepness extends to gameplay as well, where essentially you will be playing two games at once. One outside the base where you must survey the land, battle anomalies, and build mining facilities, and another inside the base, where you build a variety of rooms for work or pleasure alike, where you can mingle with the alters, set research projects, and assign tasks in what reminds me more of a Fallout Shelter minigame. The oscillating between these two becomes even more fascinating too when you add on the time element, where in every day you must make vital decisions on what to accomplish since you only have so much time before it's night and radiation comes out and you need sleep. Alters' mood will affect how long and hard they work, and the gameplay essentially becomes a balancing act of staying alive, maintaining resources, keeping alters happy, and planning ahead. It's an addictive loop that's quite cozy, especially after a while, but truly it's the heart of this game and the story it tells that will leave the biggest mark. In the later acts, big reveals start to happen that finally show you a little bit of what's going on. And because of how much choice and consequence there is in the game, it's ripe for multiple playthroughs that show you all the different results of your actions. In fact, there's even a system in game that allows you to see the previous choices you've made in other saves. That way, you can make new ones going forward and see how they result. And honestly, overall, I was just really surprised by not only how fun, but moving The Alters is. It's a game that essentially came out of nowhere and even now gets almost no recognition when truly everyone should be giving it a shot. Especially when you consider maybe my single favorite part about this entire game are the movies, which you can find hidden in each zone, after which you can watch them with your alters in the social room that you can build. These movies, without exaggeration, are some of the funniest skits I have ever seen in a game. Whereas most of the time comedy in games is either pretty cringe or just gets a small chuckle out of me, these movies, let me tell you, these movies had me genuinely smiling and laughing uncontrollably sitting by myself on the couch. Even if this game doesn't look up your alley at first, get far enough into the first act to find your first movie, build the social room, and even just this should carry you to the end, knowing that there's a bunch more out there to find. The Alters deserves a lot more love than I've seen it get so far, and I hope this recommendation can convince a couple of you to at least give it a shot.